Win every round. It's that special time of year. It's that time of year where Ryan Heath comes down from Mount Statistically Significant with a new tablet of fantasy football commandments for us. It's that time of year where we all come together and nerd out. It's fantasy draft season. And man, the commandments this year have hit me hard, Ryan. Thou shalt not draft 0 RB teams. Thou shalt not chase elite tight end seasons. The era of Travis Kelce has ended. Thou shalt not draft middle round QBs. You got to either commit to one of the dual threat elite quarterbacks at the top or draft a position in round 11 or later. And most of all, love one another and keep drafting Achane. Those are some of the commandments. We're going to get into all of them today. You're listening to Beyond the Box Score. I'm Jacob Gibbs. I'm joined by my friend, my colleague, Ryan Heath, and we're going to help you win some leagues today. We've got a fan-made intro, Ryan. We are just living our absolute best nerd lives over here. It's so fun. Ryan, you've done it again. Absolute banger of an article proliferating around the nerdiest corners of the fantasy football online space. I would dare say anyone watching this video, if you have not read Ryan's article, The Anatomy of a League Winner, you're already losing your fantasy football competition. Don't worry, though. We've got you. We're taking a historical approach to what has won leagues in the past. We're going to provide a blueprint for you on how to draft in 2025. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a deep dive into a lot of nerdy stuff, a lot of data, a lot of math. But I think it really is going to help you be a better fantasy football player. And that starts with your draft. So Ryan, thank you for your work. Thank you for being here. We do have a lot to cover today, but before we get into a discussion about how to draft starting in round 1, I want to know what you think the good people need to know about the research that's going to serve as the backbone for this discussion today.
Yeah, so I love that you put it in terms of these are the fantasy football commandments, because like what I'm going to say to people is honestly like, let's take that down like half a notch. I wouldn't quite go so far as like these are commandments. You have to draft this way. All of this data is like historical and descriptive in nature, right? Anything could happen in any given year. And you can certainly make arguments, as you might later in the show, that certain players are just different and the market is different every year. So you want to not get completely boxed into, well, this is what's worked in the past. I've done my best to apply what's worked in the past to today's fantasy football landscape and interpret that for all you guys. But yeah, I would be a little bit looser on like the hardcore rules of like when to draft a guy by round, which we'll go through because it's a fruitful discussion. But yeah, I mean, the only thing you said that I would say is like a hardcore commandment is you need to keep drafting Achane. That I will say rises to the level of that. You just got to do that. That's
every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're having fun with it. Some of these have hit me hard, and I think Brock Bowers is the one we're hoping to carve out a decent amount of time to have a Brock Bowers debate at the end of the show, because the data just suggests that is not the direction you should go with one of your early picks. But that doesn't have to. You don't have to be rigid within that, like Ryan said. Like maybe Bowers breaks the mold. Maybe he is like kind of the Kelce that we've had. Ryan has a lot of compelling data that suggests that we're moving out of that era. And I think that is valid. That was a very special time with Kelce, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, all aligning together, Tyreek Hill. So yeah, we've got a lot to get into. I wanted to talk about like the backbone for your research in terms of power laws, Scott Barrett, league winners, exactly what we're talking about here. What is the thesis in targeting these players and why it's so important to like win your leagues with these high upside players?
Yeah, so Anatomy was originally a follow-up to Scott Barrett's magnum opus article, actually, which was called Upside Wins Championships. And basically what Scott argued there and what he continues to argue today is just looking at the players that actually help you win leagues based very objectively on playoff win rate, every single year, there are only a handful of players. We're talking definitely fewer than 20. In some years, as few as like 6 or 7. There's only a handful that are actually posting well above average playoff advance rates. In other words, there are a handful of power law players that are a tiny fraction of the overall player pool, but that are responsible for the vast majority of fantasy football wins on a weekly basis and fantasy football championships on a yearly basis. So really the goal then is, well, we got to find those guys. We got to get at least a few of those guys on our fantasy team. This league winning upside, or these power law players, are the only thing in fantasy football that is actually a scarce resource. You can, in most fantasy football formats, get decently usable waiver wire level, replacement level production at most positions. That is, the floor is not scarce at all. It's that league winning upside that's very scarce, and that we can increasingly only find earlier in our fantasy drafts, depending on the position. So that's kind of the orientation here, is we are looking for the big hits, the only guys that matter. We're not looking for like the small ADP wins where the wide receiver 30 by ADP finishes as the wide receiver 25. That stuff matters a little bit more in like best ball, but hey, it's almost August. We're talking about regular, good old managed fantasy football leagues this time of year. So yeah, that's kind of the overall philosophy.
Yeah, and this is all pulled from ESPN managed leagues, all the data, right? And it's for PPR. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So all the data is from ESPN managed leagues. The default settings over there are PPR, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, and 4 teams making the playoffs. So everything we say should be understood in the context of that. In leagues with more wide receivers or more flex spots, some of what we're talking about is going to change. In super flex leagues, obviously stuff we're going to talk about is going to change. But yeah, we're kind of sticking with just the most basic, like redraft common fantasy format.
Yep. All right. So you see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got Ryan's article pulled up. If you want to find this, if you're listening, it is 2025 Anatomy of a League Winner. It's on fantasypoints.com. Also, I have to tell you to follow Ryan Heath, one of the best follows on Twitter. It's at RyanJ_Heath. And then I'm going to do my best to fill in for the plug god today. Shout out Dan Schneier. Miss you, buddy. Do like the video, please. Hover your hand over that mouse. Give us a like. Help us keep pumping out good content. We've got Ryan this week. We had Lord Reeves last week. We have JJ Zachariason and a bunch of amazing analysts coming on next week to talk through sleepers. It is draft season, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it and help get you in the right position to make all of the right picks. All right, so we're going to go through this article. We're not going to get to all of it today, but I want to shout out JJ, of course. I want to get to some of the parameters that you set up positionally. That was some of the most interesting aspects of it to me, was what defined like the wide receiver position in terms of first downs per route run. We just yesterday, Dan and I put together a deep dive on per route data, try to just catch everybody up on what we've seen year over year and why that's important. And first downs are at the top of that list. And then the other thing that really stood out to me was, like you said, the running back position. It's getting harder and harder to supplement any injuries or bad picks with waiver wire pickups. Like the days of getting Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt off the waiver wire are gone. Just training camp hype has pushed this guy who was the last running back picked in the draft up to where he's going rounds 13, 14, 15 in underdog drafts. Like, it's truly a sick time that we're living in right now. Sorry for contributing to that, but I've had a lot of fun with it. But okay, so here is the first thing I want to focus on. We've got the percentage of league winners by position. And you see, of course, running back is dominating this. But lately, we've seen an uptick in the number of receivers who are making a big difference. And I asked Ryan, so his cutoff that he used was 55%, a 55% playoff rate. And so we're looking at the players who helped you get to the playoffs, which is ultimately like the most important aspect of being able to put yourself in a position to win a championship. That number, I asked him what it looked like if you drop it to 50% or 60%. I wanted to play around and see if it changes anything at the positions here. You notice that there were more wide receivers, especially lately, when you upped it to 60%. Is that what I read in the DMs today?
Yeah.
I'm still
So
catching up and wrapping my head around all of this.
yeah, no. So overall, if you bump it up to 60%, it makes running backs look a lot more dominant over the
Uh-huh.
past 8 years. But it is really pretty similar over the past 3 years or so. And I talk about this quite a bit in the article. But basically, the market shifted right around 2022 in terms of now we are taking more wide receivers in the very early rounds, in rounds 1 and 2, than we ever have historically. And I think that has largely just been correct and efficient because we, at the same time, saw an uptick in the rate of league winning wide receivers in those early rounds. And also, it's coincided with when the NFL schedule went to 17 games, with basically every team now employing a running back backfield by committee. So just kind of all of these structural shifts in the NFL offensive meta have made wide receiver pretty close with running back in terms of the percentage of league winners they're churning out. But yeah, looking at the wider data back to 2017, you're always going to see running backs with kind of the highest ceilings. Like, it's very rare that a wide receiver is going to be on 75% of championship teams like Christian McCaffrey was in at least one or two of his prime years. Jamar Chase was getting there very close last year. But yeah, for the most part, like overall ceiling, like the insane rates, it is going to be running backs over receivers.
For sure. And so another chart I've got here from Ryan is the percentage of players drafted each round to become league winners. Just to give you an idea of where you've been able to find these players historically. This is from 2017 to 2024. And so you see your best bets at running back and receiver are early. This tight end data where you got 50% in round 2, 14% in round 3. Both those numbers are wholly representative of only Kelce. Is that right? The 14 and the 50%?
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, there have been other tight ends drafted in rounds 2 through 4 other than Kelce over this range. But Travis Kelce is the only tight end from inside the first 4 rounds in the last 8 years to hit a league winning season over a 55% playoff rate. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind when Travis Kelce is kind of universally considered not to be the same type of producer that he was a few years ago.
Right. And so, for the purposes of today's discussion, I've got pulled up here. We're mostly going to look at this through another lens that Ryan provided, which is like adjusted for Kelce, if we think we are like in the post Kelce era. And so, the data I've got on the screen here, you can see this is if you remove those Kelce seasons, this is just the past 2 years of data. Is that right?
Yeah, that looks correct. Or since 2022, I believe, if
Past
that's
three
what you pulled it
seasons?
from. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um, the numbers really increase for all the positions because there's no tight ends in the first 4 rounds that are giving you these league winning seasons without those, historic Kelce seasons. And this is what I want to focus on as like our thesis today. If we believe that Bowers isn't this type of contributor, um, I think that he could be, and we're going to get into that more at the end of the show. But I think this is your best bet. This is what has been your best bet over the last 3 seasons, is to really hammer these running back and receiver picks. And then you'll notice these quarterback rates in round 3 and 4 are just like off the charts. 75% of the quarterbacks drafted in round 3 over the past 3 years have turned into league winners. And that's because we've identified the guys who should go in that range. And it's some of the best quarterbacks to ever produce fantasy points, and they're in the primes of their career, and they're in good offenses. Other than maybe Josh Allen, they're really in offenses that are perfectly built to be conducive to fantasy success. So I I want to start there, the quarterback position. Like, I'm curious, like, you've had a lot more time to think about this data than I have. And I think you do more drafts than me too. As I've dug into this, I keep finding myself wanting to get cute and pass on the round 3 and 4 quarterbacks and just take as many shots as I can at running backs and receivers early. Because historically, running backs and receivers have been the bulk of where you're finding league winners. This hit rate is really high for quarterback in this range, but only 11% of the total league winners in Ryan's data have been from the quarterback position. You want to, in my mind, get as many running back and receiver shots as you can, and you can find quarterbacks late. But I've seen you tweeting about it a little bit. I think you're still more inclined to, like, if you can get one of these elite guys around 4, do it, right? Is that kind of where you're at, where your head's at right now?
Yeah, so I'll talk through this a little bit. I have a lot of thoughts here.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with, honestly, the 75% and the 67% that you have up on the screen right now might be underselling it even a little bit. And that's because that data includes it. I think at least a couple seasons of like Patrick Mahomes going up in that range where he obviously definitely shouldn't, and we would not ever take someone with that profile there nowadays. I'm sure there's like a Joe Burrow season in there where he didn't quite get across the line. But if you just look at Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen over that 3-year period, when they went in rounds 3 or 4, they are 5 for 6 in being a league winner. So it is extremely, extremely likely that if you draft this year, there's 4 of them because of Jaden Daniels. If you draft one of those 4 hypermobile quarterbacks, it is very, very likely you're going to hit a league winning season from them. But kind of to your point, I don't think that means that you have to leave your draft with one of them. So a few things are going to influence my decision here. So number one is, remember, all of this data is based on 10-team managed ESPN leagues with 2 wide receiver slots and only 1 flex. If you're in a format where there are more roster spots at the wide receiver position, at the flex position, or if you're in a league that has more than 10 teams, a lot of people play 12 and 14 teams, that is going to necessarily reduce the value of these high-end quarterbacks a little bit in comparison to the skill positions, just because the scarcity increases even more at those running back and wide receiver positions when you have more teams and more lineup spots that you need to set. So yeah, I guess in short, if I'm in a 10-team ESPN league, yeah, I'm really trying to leave the first 4 rounds with one of those 4 quarterbacks, just because it's easier to catch up at other positions later, just because there's just way more depth available in especially like rounds 5 and round 6. But like on Underdog, for example, where it's 12 team and wide receivers are a lot more important in best ball, or in some of these like 12 to 14 team analyst leagues or mock drafts that I've done. Yeah, I think in those circumstances, or if you think your competition is really strong, then it makes sense to try to give yourself every possible shot you can at a running back and a wide receiver in the early rounds, just because they tend to win bigger. If you just look at value over replacement of the top 3 guys versus the replacement level of each position, running backs and wide receivers pretty consistently are out-vorping quarterbacks, for lack of a better term. So yeah, like it's very likely if you draft a top QB that you'll get a very, very good pick. But it's not as likely you're going to get like I said, the Christian McCaffrey 75% playoff rate type of season.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In Ryan's article, it shows the win percentage, the playoff percentage for these guys, and like the top one at quarterback is Lamar Jackson 2019, when you're able to get him in round 13 at 69%. The next highest is Jalen Hurts at 65%. And any of these round 3, 4 quarterbacks, the highest rate is 64%. Whereas if you look at the running backs, you get some 65, 70, 72% rates. So you do get bigger wins there. I think that's all really interesting. We're going to take a quick break and then get to some of the later round quarterback strategies if that is the way you're inclined to go.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season, now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
All right, Ryan, I'm going to pull up some images and put on the screen to show like these winners that you identified and like the percentages. And while I do that, can you talk us through the other way to get quarterback league winners that doesn't involve the round 3 or 4 investment into these dual threat quarterbacks?
Yeah, so I'll say first off that especially over the last few years, we have seen a lot fewer league-winning quarterbacks from the late rounds. We have seen some pretty good ones and some amazing ADP values, though. So I don't think it's totally crazy to want to go that route and, again, give yourself more shots at running back and wide receiver. But the way that we do that now is a little different than you might think, especially if you were playing fantasy like pre-2020, 2021, that kind of era. It used to always be, well, you got to go after the Rich Rebar, Konami code quarterbacks, the dual threat rushers. And that's definitely still true. But nowadays, almost all of those guys have been pushed up in ADP into the early rounds or the middle rounds. So it's not just as easy as like, oh, you can leave your draft with Justin Fields or whatever in the final round because you know he's going to run 100 times or whatever his rookie or sophomore season, right? So kind of another way that we can get an edge in the late rounds at quarterback is just by targeting the good offensive systems. And if you scroll down a little bit, Jacob, you'll see that all of the biggest late round hits that were not hypermobile guys, like not Jaden Daniels his rookie year, were just these pocket passers in these I call it McShanahan systems. So either the Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay coaching tree. All the late round hits are just pocket passers from those teams. And very often the first year that a guy plays in one of those systems is when he hits it like over a 45 to 50% playoff rate. So yeah, you can see CJ Stroud, Matt Stafford, Baker Mayfield last year with Liam Cohn, Brock Purdy, Tua with Mike McDaniel his first year. These are all the types of situations we should be targeting. And that's for a bunch of complicated schematic reasons with how these coaches use motion and play action. And it just creates per play efficiency at an insane rate that no other offensive system has really provided. But yeah, that's what I would take away is in the late rounds, you want to either draft really the only high upside rusher there, in my opinion, which is Drake May, or you want to go after these McShanahan pocket passers, like your JJ McCarthy's, your Jordan Loves, and what have you.
And Brock Purdy, right? I feel like he was one of the key takeaways for you. He's somebody that Dan and I are both fans of for fantasy and real life, and our producer, Aaron, who's a San Francisco 49ers fan, holds with disdain. He thinks Brock Purdy is the worst quarterback in the league. He said that. So help the people understand Brock Purdy, what he's been doing for fantasy. Because I think like JJ McCarthy, it makes sense. He's super cheap. Brock Purdy's in a little bit more of an awkward range where you could be maybe inclined to take shots on some of these upside, wide receivers or running backs, the young guys. But he's given us some really encouraging signals, even though he's not in his like first year like some of these other quarterbacks that you've outlined.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start with Purdy. I don't care how good or bad of a real life quarterback you think he is. All the guy does is score fantasy points. That's what we're concerned with. That's what we're trying to predict. So with the pocket passers, what you're really aiming for is I want to just hit an abnormally high passing touchdown rate type of season. Purdy's an excellent candidate for that. His career TD rate is 6%. That is higher than Joe Burrow. That's higher than Pat Mahomes. That is higher than basically everybody in the league aside from Lamar Jackson. And last year, he was down at the league average, right? The offense kind of fell apart midway through the year. He didn't have all of his weapons that people are so convinced he's only good with. But that wasn't even really true. So like it didn't completely go off for fantasy football, but Purdy's numbers were incredible even without all his weapons last year. He had 7 full games without at least 2 of Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey. And he was up at 8.7 yards per attempt and 0.61 fantasy points per dropback in that sample, both top 4 numbers. Purdy's just incredible. He's also a sneaky kind of scrambler rusher threat. He averaged, I think the stat was more scramble yards per game than either Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. So He's awesome. Purdy's like my favorite kind of like middle-ish round guy. I don't know if you'd consider him middle or late rounds with his ADP, but that in that range, he's definitely who I'm clicking.
Yeah, the scrambling was new last year. He had to do it. Hopefully, it'll be a more functional offense where he won't have to run for his life and create plays on his own so much, and that might affect his fantasy. I'm more inclined to go with JJ McCarthy. Sam Darnold was QB9 last year in fantasy points per dropback, and I think McCarthy might only be able to expand on that with his rushing ability. I think that's something that that we didn't get from Darnold, and maybe is a little overlooked with McCarthy. We saw it in college, some of the advanced statistics, and then also they're talking about it. A little bit of buzz out of camp that they're going to try to be to weaponize his legs. And I think he might be like the overlooked one here that's like kind of the mix of both worlds, like he's got the system, the coordinator, he's got the weapons, and he can do stuff with his legs too. And he's so freaking cheap.
Yeah, no, fully agree. I would be very happy leaving a fantasy draft where the only thing I do at quarterback is I draft JJ McCarthy in the final round. I think he's just an incredibly safe and good bet to just be a QB1 that you can get absolutely for free. We have seen basically every quarterback that's come through Kevin O'Connell's system just put up QB1 numbers in fantasy. Josh Dobbs was averaging nearly 20 fantasy points per game. Nick Mullins was at 18 fantasy points per game in his starts. And this team just throws a ton. They throw in the red zone a ton very critically. If you think JJ McCarthy has even a chance to be a better real life NFL quarterback than Sam Darnold, then remember what we all thought about Sam Darnold a year ago, then yeah, McCarthy's just the most obvious, like extremely safe late round QB pick.
All right. Yeah, I wanted to cover quarterback first because that does affect the way that we approach the draft as we go round by round. So there have been a lot of league winners at quarterback. One last thing I wanted to point out was the win rates for these players. So this is the most common quarterbacks on ESPN playoff rosters. So like Lamar Jackson last year was on 64% of playoff rosters. The cutoff we have here is 55%. You see we've got three guys in bold here, Lamar, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts, that hit that rate last year. I want to compare quarterback to the rest of the positions because like Ryan said, the wins aren't quite as big. So 69% is the highest, and there's only 6 players above 60%. If you're watching on YouTube here, you can see this. For comparison, here are the league winning running backs from 2017 through 24. We've got, how many did you say? 20-ish above 60%. And at the top end, you've got 78%, 77%, 76%, 73%. Maybe we aren't getting these legendary Christian McCaffrey seasons anymore. That's something you and I have both covered. That's covered in the article as well. Backfields are more split. Receptions are down for running backs across the board. But it doesn't have to be that. Like we've got Nick Chubb seasons in here. We've got plenty of, late round seasons as well. And all these seasons above 60%. But the bulk of the high end seasons are coming in rounds 1 through 3. Wide receiver position, 72%, 70%, 70%. All these higher than anything you're getting at quarterback. And there are way more seasons above 60%. And then tight end, we've got Travis Kelce at 72%. And that was a clear difference-making season relative to anything we've ever seen at tight end other than that 2022 season. But there are the same number of 60% or higher seasons at the tight end position as quarterback. But I think really, as you look at the top end here, if you're looking for the absolute best league winners here, I think you need to be focused on running back and receiver. But if you are looking for the highest probability of landing a league winner, then it is using that round 3-4 pick on quarterback. I haven't quite made up my mind on how I want to approach it. I feel like if you can get one in round 4, then that is, if you don't have any of the running backs or receivers that you identified in that range that you really like, it's just an easy, safe pick. Just click the button. But if you want to play a bit looser and try to get the most upside you can, then you maybe try to land a couple of these later round quarterbacks that Ryan hit on.
Yeah, and that's, I think you just put that perfectly, kind of the decision you have there. The way I've been handling it in practice is for me, just looking at this year's crop of wide receivers, there is a pretty big like teardrop after a Lad McConkey or a T Higgins goes off the board. Those are kind of like the last guys in my like very big top tier at wide receiver, like defined as loosely as possible. And then you kind of get like 20 wide receivers that all project kind of similarly. You get into like the Terry McLaurins, the Garrett Wilsons, like that kind of whole tier of guys and below. I've just been taking the elite quarterbacks over them, essentially, is kind of where my cutoff is. So in practice, I end up with a lot more Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts than Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, just because of where they end up going. Usually Daniels and Hurts are around kind of after that top tier at the skill positions has been exhausted as I see it. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been approaching it.
Good stuff. All right, we're going to take one more break, and then we're going to go round by round. Have some fun here.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure.
Just try to keep up.
Every face-off.
This ends now.
And every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime!
all 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, so if you are watching on the screen, you see this. I've prepared like the players who are going in each round at running back and receiver, and I've color coded them with pink being like the premium picks, the absolute most likely to be a league winner based off of all the research I've consumed from Ryan. The green being the next likely, where it's like you got a green flag here, but it's not a perfect profile necessarily. And then the other players who don't really fit into what we're looking for. And Ryan, I want you to please point out any disputes you have, but this is based off of the research that's in the League Winner article, as well as the research that Ryan has done on age curves. And so what I've got on the screen now is running back fantasy performance by career year. He also breaks it down by age. And so it shows like relative to the player's career baseline averages, how they performed year over year. And so for running backs, you're really looking for years 2 through 6. And even year 7, you're probably fine. But after that, you start to see significant drop-offs at receiver, sort of similar with a bit more longevity. So you're looking at the real prime years are like years 3 through 7. And again, he's got this all by age. And then it starts to really drop off around year 10 or 11. For some elite receivers, they're able to sustain it much longer. Devontae Adams is probably the best bet to fit into that bucket this year. And so that's kind of how I formulated, like how I color coded these. Did you have anything you wanted to add on age curves before we just start talking about some of these players?
Yeah, I guess I'll just say kind of broadly on age curves, people might be a little confused if they're used to me talking about, oh, well, it's the year 1 through year 3 breakouts that we have to look for. We're not just looking for breakouts. We're looking for something a little bit above and beyond a breakout, which is like one of the best seasons of a player's entire NFL career, right? So it's not like I am drawn toward the year 2 guys for sure. But historically, especially at the receiver position, is probably the best example. Most of these league winning seasons have been actually in years 3 through 5 or up through year 7, kind of perfectly aligning with what Jacob just showed on the screen. So that's something to keep in mind. I really like the sophomore receivers this year. I think it's the best sophomore wide receiver class ever, probably. So we'll get into some of them, I'm sure. But yeah, that's a good summary, I think.
Yeah, again, I'll highlight the per route primer that Dan and I did yesterday. We went into detail on Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, everything we've seen from this incredible class. But that's the reason that they're green here and not pink, is if you look at the performance relative to their baseline averages, year 2 is good. It's a prime breakout year. But the best numbers are year 5, year 6, year 3. Like those are the primes. And that's what Ryan's research on the anatomy of a league winner showed as well is that a lot of these seasons were coming from older, not older receivers, just older than the freaking 22-year-old receivers. It's really rare for a 22-year-old to put it all together and produce this massive league winning season where they give you 350 PPR points or whatever. At the same time, it's really rare to get a player like Brian Thomas Jr. that like exists at all and is then potentially paired with Liam Cohen. And like, so if you want to chase that upside, I totally get it. But there's a reason he's not pink here. Okay,
yeah,
so,
I have BTJ ranked above Nico and above Amon-Ra St. Brown this year. If anyone feels like they need permission to chase that upside, that is where I have him.
I have him ranked ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. But the more that I've dug into the archetypes you've laid out here, Sun God fits really well, right?
He does, yes. And so it terrifies me to be like, I'm not like far behind ADP on Amon-Ra. It's really hard just because there are 15 or 16 like round one quality profiles this year, and I just happen to have Amon-Ra towards like the back of that. It doesn't mean I don't like him at all. It's just, vibes with Ben Johnson being gone. Jameson Williams is apparently what the Lions want to run their offense through and isolate him per John Morton. So it's given me like a little bit of a scare, but just on paper, it totally shouldn't. Amon-Ra's profile is insane from all of these angles.
Dude, I dug into the per route data and like isolated all of the stuff that boosts it, all the coordinator related stuff, play action, motion, under center dropbacks, stuff that catches defenses off guard. And Jameson Williams was like prime suspect, number one receiver for having project that. And obviously he's good. He's like very fast. Much of it was boosted by Ben Johnson. Can you not? You can hear me? Okay, cool. Had a mic issue there. How much of that did you catch? Did you catch me ranting about Jameson Williams?
I think I heard you saying you dug into all the per route stuff, all the schematic stuff that helps receivers, and that JMO was kind of sticking out to you a ton in terms of someone that could be even better this year.
I'll redo it and we can just cut this out, hopefully, Aaron.
Okay.
So what I said is I dug into all the per route data, and like if you isolate like when there's only two receivers on the field, when the quarterback is under center, when play action is used, when pre-snap motion is used, all these things that are efficiency boosters in terms of route running data, basically things that are making it look like we're going to run. A lot of the Ben Johnson deceptive stuff that really boosted Jameson Williams in a huge way, like more than almost any receiver. It's like Deebo Samuel was one of the only guys that had more fraudulent data last year. And I don't want to discredit JMO because he's obviously a really talented player, but Amon-Ra St. Brown's numbers did not really drop off at all. I think he's just really, really good. If I had to guess who was the most impacted by Ben Johnson, it was him. And I am the same. I'm a little bit low on Sun God relative to consensus just because I'm so excited for Nico Collins. I'm so excited for BTJ. But if you're inclined to just freaking click the button, you know what's worked, you like just keep doing it, I think that makes so much sense. His profile is exactly what you're looking for in this range. So round one, I feel like wide receiver needs to be a priority. I'm really curious what you think because I know Devon Achane is a priority for you and he's pushing up into the round one discussion. And so I've got here, all the round one receivers I think are pink, just perfect picks. I think Nico Collins belongs in that conversation as well. Ryan said that he has BTJ above Nico, so I would assume he's nearing the round one discussion. And I know how much Ryan loves Achane. So my question is, can you rank these guys that are at the back end of round one, potential round two turn in terms of Achane, BTJ, Neighbors, and then Drake London and AJ Brown? I would throw into that as well.
Yeah, this is, in my opinion, like the hardest thing to get right in fantasy football this year is the round 1-2 turn. So of those names you just mentioned, I would have Achane first. I just really think he has a complete round one running back type of profile. He kind of wins either way that the Dolphins offense goes. Either it's kind of broken like last year and they can never get teams out of these too high shells because the interior run game is not working. But if that's the case, Achane's just going to catch a million screen passes again, especially with Jonnu Smith gone now as well. Like if they just have to run their offense dink and dunk style over the middle of the field and not downfield at all, Achane will 100% score as at least a top 5, top 6 running back with Tua healthy. Or the alternative and the fun thing to think about is, well, in 2023, the Dolphins were the most valuable backfield by XFP in the NFL, with Raheem Mostert and Achane splitting that. And that was because they did have a downfield passing game. They did have an interior run game, which they have upgraded the personnel along the offensive line, at least in the interior this year. And there are clips out there of Mike McDaniel saying this exact thing, which is, well, we have to earn the safety coming down into the box to stop the run and opening up the deep passing and the explosives and to get back to that. So if they are able to, well, then it's insane wheels up. Then Achane has the highest upside of any running back in the NFL, arguably. So, yeah, I think Achane is both extremely safe and extremely high upside. So he would be like my first guy in that tier, which is well above ADP consensus. After that, you had said Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, and then like Drake London, AJ Brown. So that order I just said is where I would have them.
Okay. I'm really pushing Drake London up the board lately. The reason I wanted to bring these guys up in comparison is because we're enamored with Achane as well. He fits exactly your description in terms of where you should be targeting running backs and league winner profiles. He's got the receptions. He's entering year 3. We've seen him do it. My only thing is just that the receiver hit rates have been so much higher in rounds 1 and 2, and round 3 and 4 has not been a good range. And if you look at the receivers drafted in that range this year, the only one that I feel good about personally is Rashee Rice. And so I'm inclined to just grab a receiver in round 1 when I think the profiles are pretty similar between Achane and those guys. Does Christian McCaffrey push into this conversation? Is he behind or above these receivers for you?
McCaffrey would be above the receivers, but he's like effectively tied with Achane for me is how I'm looking at it. I don't know. I changed my mind on Christian McCaffrey this year, like every single day. The more I talk to Scott Barrett, the more I'm like, oh man, should I just rank McCaffrey as like my RB1? So, but yeah, McCaffrey is like above those receivers for me. So I do think it really depends on your draft position though. Like my ideal start is wide receiver in like late round 1 and Achane in early round 2. That's like the ideal. But I think if you're drafting towards the front half, going with like Bijan Robinson and then a Drake London or a Ladd McConkey on most platforms are going to be around like near the 2-3 turn. I think that's also viable. But yeah, mostly I would say get at least one wide receiver through the first 2 rounds, because I agree that the profiles in rounds 3 and 4, both historically and this year, are not as enticing to me.
I hate to be like rigid about it, but I just really feel like you have to leave rounds 1 and 2 with one receiver. Are you on board with that? Or are you fine starting with 2 running backs if you really like the picks?
Yeah, I have not had a 2 running back start this year that I felt great about. So yeah, I would co-sign. You want at least one wide receiver through the first 2 rounds.
Where are you at with Bucky Irving? Because I feel like he could fit into this strong pass catcher bucket, but that takes a leap of faith on what the role will be. I do think that the new coordinator, Grizzard, is really was a big part of the screen game last year, and I hope that he will continue to like involve Bucky in that way. The Bucks just really, really boosted the fantasy production last year with design targets to the running back position. I don't remember if Bucky was, I don't think he was mentioned in here. He's somebody I've just been getting nervous on lately because like the Bucks seem so enamored with their other running backs too, and it feels like it might be split up. So is he just not in this conversation for you?
Yeah, so I'm nervous about Tristan Wirfs missing at least the first month of the season. That is pretty big to me. I'm also nervous that this Buccaneers running game, before Bucky got there, was incredibly inefficient just on the ground. Liam Cohn takes over, Bucky gets there. Suddenly it's very efficient. But also Rachaad White was efficient on the ground last year, who is like the guy that we made fun of for multiple years of just getting totally inefficient touches. Even Rachaad White was an efficient running back last year, at least by the basic stats. So yeah, I am a little bit concerned on Bucky. Just with Cohn being gone, will the run game be designed as effectively? And also, yeah, the screen stuff is really huge. Bucky did not play all that much on third down last year. Most of his targets, as you were saying, Jacob, was design stuff, but also specifically on like first and second down, where there's like the obvious intentionality of we're going to get the ball in Bucky Irving's hands, even if we don't want him pass blocking on third down. I don't know if I trust Josh Grizzard to do the same thing. So yeah, I've been kind of just like neutral on him. I'm trying to kind of work my draft strategy around like not having to click Bucky in round 2. I really like after the Achane, like Ashton Genty kind of tier of running backs, I lose a lot of interest until round 3.
Yeah, I'm looking at round 2, and even though that's been like a prime spot to draft running back, as you actually look at the guys who are going in round 2, not many of them are, other than Achane. I mean, is Jonathan Taylor, Jacobs, they don't really fit into the league winner outline that we have here. And so I think it's like, if you can get one of these receivers in round 2, go listen to me go on and on and on about Drake London on Tuesday's per route data show. Like, even AJ Brown, I think is a fantastic value, and he does fit because the window of receivers extended longer than running back. I think year 7 is still his prime. So I think we're laying out round 1, just any of these players who fit the description, whether that's Achane, the receivers, and you would throw Genty and CMC into that bucket too?
CMC for sure. Genty would be kind of after this tier of receivers for me. But yeah, so I'm probably a little below consensus on Genty, but I would click him in round 2.
Round 2, yeah, okay. I think round 1, if you can get one of these receivers, if you can get Achane, obviously at the top end, then you've got Bijan. I heard that we've been pronouncing it wrong this whole time. Sorry. And then in round 2, I think you're really honing in on the receivers. Round 3 is where it gets really complicated, I think, because the quarterback position is such an easy click, like we already talked about. The running backs, there's some profiles that I don't know what to make of. Like Kyron is tough. James Cook is tough. Both of those, it feels like they could regress, whether that's touchdowns, playing time, whatever. But they fit the profiles perfectly. I think your favorite, if I had to guess, is probably Chase Brown from this range because, like we talked about with the receiving, he fits exactly what you want. Age, good offense, and could have massive target numbers. What are you doing in round 3 if you're not going QB?
Yeah, so round 3 is just a big running back round for me. And I mean, Chase Brown has a lot to do with that for sure, with how we have the ADP kind of set up here. Brown to me is an incredible bet. Was not very long ago that we would have to take a guy like this at the 1-2 turn. Like I'm reminded of like when Kenyon Drake was the 109, whatever that was 4 or 5 years ago. The market, I think, has appropriately priced in the risks of, well, we saw a partial season that was amazing from a low draft capital running back. And so that might scare people off, like, oh, why'd you just compare the guy you love to Kenyon Drake? But I do think it's different with Chase Brown and with this Bengals offense. So the Bengals have proven time and time again that they have no interest in really investing in the running back position at all. They completely love Chase Brown. Zach Moss got cut today or yesterday, very recently when we recorded this. So this backfield really just looks like Chase Brown and Samaje Perine kind of mixing in on pass downs and in pass protection. But I mean, if Chase Brown gets 85 to 90% of the workload he saw post Zach Moss last year, that he's a league winner. That's it. He's finishing as a top 6 running back on one of the league's best offenses. And it just seems likely he's going to do it. Even if you say he's not going to play as many third downs, Brown averaged over 3.5 targets per game just on first and second down last year in that post-week 8 sample.
That's a really important stat, I think. Like the Bengals produce so much passing volume to the running back position. That's something we've seen consistently from Burrow. And, I think the chat, because they're all like Gibbs pilled, are going to, say that you're sleeping on Taj Brooks in Cincinnati. But like most likely Brown gets that early down work, even if Brooks emerges, even if P. Ryan is a meat shield, as Ryan has described him on third downs and passing downs as a pass blocker. I think the targets are still going to be there. So I think he's a fantastic pick in that range. I'm curious what you think about these round 3 receivers, because someone who I've really been coming around on is T. Higgins, and he does fit the description for a league-winning receiver. He's still right in his prime. He's in a crowded offense that is going to probably score a lot of points, and that might sound like a negative, the crowded offense thing, but that was actually a characteristic that Ryan found was pretty common, was that there might be a little bit of target ambiguity and things could push upward in a big way. We saw what T was capable of last year. It was his best season on a per-route basis. The touchdowns were there. If he's ever healthy, which is a huge if, for 17 games, it could be massive. And then Ladd McConkey, of course, is so easy to get excited about. So if you don't go early QB, and if maybe the running backs that you want in this range push up the board a little bit, you don't feel comfortable, clicking some of the other running back names like James Cook or Kyron Williams, what do you think about the receivers that go in this range?
Yeah, so I absolutely love Ladd McConkey. He is a certified league-winning pick in round 3. The per route data with him is just incredible. Just the overall production with him over the second half of last year was just incredible. He is already one of the best receivers, one of the best outside receivers in the NFL per all of the per route data. Like he is up in the top 5 with like Nico Collins and AJ Brown and like yards and first downs per route run just from the outside. Also when he's playing on the outside, that's going to be a lot of the time they're in 12 personnel, which is another efficiency hack. So yeah, I love Ladd there. I think anywhere in round 3, he's a total smash. Higgins is interesting. So you're right. Yes, he's in the prime of his career. I had found that like the offensive ambiguity is not really a big deal. It usually means that it's a good offense if we're drafting multiple guys from it in the early rounds. I think Higgins is a lot better of like a best ball pick just because the per game production is probably going to be really good at the end of the year. He projects as our like wide receiver 7 on a per game basis at fantasy points this year. But I mean, you got to chop off a game or two. You're got to chop off a game or two that he's going to be active and play a decoy role, which we see every single year from T. Higgins. So yes, Higgins is like right there at the end of that wide receiver tier, below Ladd for me. I don't mind taking him. I've been drafting him, but I definitely prefer Ladd from a managed league context.
Yeah, it's hard to not be too excited about Ladd McConkey, especially if you can land him in that round 3 range. To me, round 5 clearly looks like a running back round. You see here the non-Kelce data has a 40% hit rate for the running backs drafted in this round. And then if you look at the running backs, Amari Hampton is, my guess, is going to push up into at least round 4. The current ADP has Amari Hampton and Breece Hall in this range, and they both perfectly fit the descriptions. Chuba Hubbard, you found, was like one of the few guys who does not fit the archetype in terms of like the top 15, 20 running backs for as good as he is. And so I think you're best served grabbing Breece or Hampton if you can. But at the same time, we have Rashee Rice potentially in this round. And it depends where you're drafting. It's going to depend on the suspension as well, where he'll fall in ADP. But if he's in this range and he's available, are you considering him over Breece or Amari Hampton?
It's going to depend a little bit on how long the suspension is. If we're below 6 games, then I would draft him over Brees. Right now I'm just not clicking Rice's name anywhere because I just want to see where the ADP is going to settle and where I'm going to actually have to click him. But yeah, Rice anywhere in this range will be great for me. Insane first down per route run profile. Like the second best we've seen from a rookie was his rookie season, second to Puka Nacua over the last handful of years. He's like sixth in the NFL in first downs per route run since he entered the league. Rashee Rice is insane. He's going to be way too cheap. The suspension, like while it matters a little bit, it matters way less in managed leagues where you can start somebody else for those first first 6 weeks, and then Rice is going to be online in the second half of the year and in your playoff weeks, which is when it's really most important. So yeah, Rice is awesome there. Brees and Hampton, I do think probably in most leagues are going to go inside of round 3 by the time, or Hampton especially is going to be a round 3 pick almost certainly in most people's drafts if they're in like mid or end of August, or maybe even higher depending on what we hear about Najee Harris. But yeah, I will follow Omarion Hampton up the board pretty much as far as I need to, just because the profile is so amazing. He just, in terms of athleticism, he is up with pretty much only Saquon Barkley among recent-ish first-round running backs. Saquon had the best fantasy season by a rookie running back of all time, for those who don't remember. Obviously, this is an offense that could be quite productive on the ground with Harbaugh and Greg Roman. They love running all this play action stuff that also just boosts the efficiency of the offense in general. Hampton is kind of built as a 3-down workhorse. He can totally carry the load. We saw it from him in college. So yeah, Hampton right now is like rapidly approaching Chase Brown. Like they're pretty close for me in my just like truth serum rankings, ignoring ADP. So yeah, and so I'm even higher on Hampton than when this article published.
Where's Kenneth Walker fit into this? Because he fits a lot of the criteria as well, and I know he's somebody that you and I are both excited about. Is he above or below Hampton for you?
Walker's below Hampton for me right now, but he is actually above Breece Hall in my truth serum rankings, and that's just because Walker had more volume last year. He was one of only 6 running backs above, or he was just below 17 expected fantasy points per game, one of only 4 running backs to go over 4.5 targets per game, I believe. So yeah, it's just, he is an insane profile. I have no idea why he goes well behind like the Breece Halls on some of these sites. Actually, I do know why. It's because he got hurt last year when people wanted him to not get hurt last year, and that reduces guys' ADPs every single year when it probably shouldn't.
Yep.
So yeah, Walker's amazing. Just like to talk about him a little bit, perfectly fits the Clint Kubiak outside zone scheme that we saw revive Alvin Kamara's career as a rusher. So that's amazing for him. Kubiak agrees. Multiple quotes of Kubiak saying he can't wait to use Walker in this system. Multiple quotes of him saying that he wants to keep getting Walker touches in the receiving game. We have seen Kubiak kind of focus his screen game almost entirely around his running backs when he's been a play caller. So both with Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison in Minnesota back in 2021, and also obviously with Alvin Kamara last year. The screen volume should be incredible. If this is anything close to a functional offense, I think Ken Walker is like the best kind of round 4, round 5, like little bit on the fringe later running back pick to just rocket up boards and finish as a top 6 guy.
Believe me, the Beyond the Box Score listeners, the FFT newsletter readers are on game when it comes to Clint Kubiak. We're very excited for what it could look like. Dan reminds us every single time that we bring him up that the offensive line could sink it all, which is a good, good grounding force. We need that in our lives because I just pump hype. But yeah, man, we've got some really easy to get hyped about running backs in this round 4 range, which is perfect because that's where we've seen, some of the highest hit rates for these league winners. So as we're going round by round here, it's going to depend on your draft slot, but I think you got to get a receiver in rounds 1 or 2. In round 3 or 4, quarterback is the safe way to go, but you also can load up on running backs or receivers if you like the profiles. And rounds 4 and 5, I think you really got to be hammering running back. if these guys are available, because you got some really awesome profiles. How you end up ranking those, running backs is up to you. But you now, because of Ryan, know which ones are the most likely to hit based off of historical data. Is there anything you want to add on Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, or Jackson Smith and Jigba? Those are names I'm not clicking at all, really. I've landed a couple JSN. They technically fit in as, good profiles within the data outline, but I'm not really that excited about any of them. Do you have anything you want to, or do you just want to move on to round 6?
Yeah, I mean, JSN is the name that you just said that I'm the most willing to click, and that is also largely just because of Clint Kubiak related personnel related efficiency hacks that I am like, well, maybe even if it's not as high volume of a passing offense, he gets there on efficiency. But yeah, I'm largely with you there. That's like the tier of receivers where I really just start losing interest and start drafting running backs and quarterbacks instead.
Yep. So you'll see round 6, I've got RJ Harvey in all caps. That will surprise no one. I'm obsessed with RJ Harvey. But before we get to the round 6 running backs, I did want to loop back around to the first down data that Ryan referenced with Rashee Rice. We've got here from Ryan, this is on Twitter, he's got the stats that have been the most predictive of the following season's fantasy points per game, and shockingly above even fantasy points per game and receiving yards per game, which are incredibly predictive. We've got first downs. And so Ryan has done a ton of research on this. It's a really important stat. Dan and I broke it down as well. I just want to point this out and get this in this episode so you know why we're talking about first downs, because it is important. And it's proven to be important in the anatomy of a league winner research as well. So I'm going to bring up some guys who are going beyond this rounds 1 through 6 range. It's mostly been important for highlighting guys who could take a leap into like elite wide receiver range, and we'll hit on those guys quickly as well, but we've already talked about them in detail. So before we do that, I want to talk about RJ Harvey, because I think he's basically where I'm going every time in round 6 if I can get him. And I'm curious, do you have anybody else in round 6 that you think fits the profile? Because I didn't see anyone.
Yeah, I mean, Travion Henderson most sites goes like around after, but kind of similar thesis. It's basically, look, rookie running backs that are live to get a lot of work in the passing game and be really efficient, that you can get in the middle rounds and can give you, like, in a best case scenario, that like low end RB1 season. That's just like a really attractive bet for me to make. Especially because the floor guys, quote unquote, are easier to find on the waiver wire, easier to find even later in drafts. As we talked about at the top, it is like the league winning upside that is actually what's scarce in drafts. So yeah, just going after the rookies with the role uncertainty is really nice. Obviously, the Sean Payton offense has been incredible in terms of targeting running backs. So that's
believe me, they know. We talk about RJ Harvey every single episode. They know.
So yeah, that's super easy for RJ Harvey. Like, Travion Henderson is kind of a version of that bet on like what I will expect to be a slightly lesser offense in terms of running back production, but depending who you talk to, but most people would say a better prospect in Travion Henderson, a bit more like clear organizational investment in draft capital. He is usually a little bit cheaper too. So yeah, I'm drafting both of those guys kind of in that range.
Yeah, the other name I would bring up, and this is probably going to sound like a reach, but if you miss out on RJ Harvey and you don't see anybody in this round 6-7 range that you like, and you see here with Ryan's data on the screen, as you get into this round 6, 7, 8, 9 range, we haven't found very many league winners. That doesn't mean that you can't, but we haven't found very many. I'm just inclined to click Colston Loveland. I'm so enamored with Colston Loveland. I know that seems like too high. That's a reach, but like I want him on basically every single team. Listen to the episode that we did on Tuesday, the per route primer. I talk about him and Trey Harris at the end of the episode. I think he's just such an obvious value and gives you your best probability of hitting a league-winning late-round tight end. Ryan wrote about Loveland in his article as well. I want to ask you, Ryan, as you look at the receiver numbers here, it's basically has only been rounds 1 through 7, and it's been very top-heavy. Does that make you less inclined to take receivers in this later round range? Because you can get some really good values on rookie receivers And as Ron Stewart has shown us, those have been players who have put up massive numbers at the end of the year, pouring out for the Elijah Moore bros here. I think this is important because your data is who's getting you to the playoffs. But these numbers are like when you're in the playoffs. It's the very end of the year, and these receivers are fully acclimated and integrated into their offense and just putting up monster production. Rookie receivers have been really important. I love Tedero McMillan. I think he's one of the best picks you can make in this kind of ambiguous range where we don't really know what to do with these guys. How are you sorting out the receiver position? Do you like need to have 3 receivers through the first 7? Do you have any hard rules? Are you clicking these rookie receivers' names?
Yeah, so before I say this, I'll just one more time remind people that this data is based off leagues with only 2 wide receiver spots and only 1 flex spot. So if you play with 3 wide receivers, then receivers even later are going to be more important to get onto your team. But yes, I love the approach you've taken here, Jacob, that you're kind of hinting at, which is my article is based on, well, how well are they doing in weeks 1 through 14 and how often are they getting you into the playoffs? But yeah, we have historically seen this backloaded production from rookie wide receivers that has a really bigger impact during the fantasy playoffs, which is really important. That's like extremely something you should be thinking about. So yeah, totally with you that after that range where I stop thinking, okay, there are wide receivers here that can just have complete league winning seasons the entire way through, then I'm like, okay, where's Tedero McMillan going? Where is Emeka Egbuka going? The like later round wide receiver darts I like to take are on the rookies. I mean, we've gotten some like negative press on Luther Burden recently, but would anybody be that surprised if he was just scoring 18 points per game in the Amon-Ra St. Brown role in the last 6 weeks of the season? That seems totally possible to me. So yes, because it is much harder to find like the overall full season league winning receiver later on, I do tend to kind of focus on those rookies that are in the ambiguous kind of situations later on. My friend and co-host Jacob Sanderson had a really good article over on his Substack, Thinking About Thinking, a couple days ago, talking about just the ADP market and especially whether we have priced in all the upside of rookie wide receivers now, because we are generally drafting them higher than before. I think that is true in best ball, which is what Sanderson focused on. In these managed leagues, man, like just looking at this ESPN ADP, yeah, Ted McMillan going in like round 7 or round 8 is just unbelievable to me. So yeah, those are like the very obvious easy clicks to make at receiver kind of later on.
Yeah, absolutely agree. What I have on the screen here is the players on the most ESPN championship teams. So this is, of course, influenced by who performs well late into the season, especially the championship week. But over the last 2 seasons, we've got Bucky Irving 4th most, Brock Bowers 5th most, Brian Thomas Jr. 9th most, and Malik Neighbors on the 10th most team. So that's 4 out of the top 10 were rookies last year. In 2023, extremely high rates for Sam Laporta and Puka Nacua, Devon Achane, CJ Stroud, Jahmyr Gibbs, really high rates as well. I don't want to be misleading. The years before that, it wasn't nearly as high. That the rookies have really come on strong for us lately. And like you said with Jacob Sanderson, and a lot of people have done this research, JJ Zachariason has been digging into it as well. We're pushing the rookies up for this very reason, you know? But still, like, T-Mac is such an obvious value. Like, is there anybody else that you're taking? Are you're down on Matthew Golden, if I remember correctly? Any other rookies like Emeka Egbuka? We're getting a lot of good buzz on him lately.
Yeah, Egbuka is super easy and obvious. I don't know where his ADP is going to end up when a lot of people are drafting, just based on what we're hearing about Chris Godwin. But yeah, Egbuka and a really, really strong prospect profile. If Godwin is kind of out of the way and he just gets to play in like the Chris Godwin slot role, that would be amazing. Obvious contingent late season upside as well, even if Godwin is healthy. So yeah, Egbuka is really easy. I'm pro Travis Hunter now. I have a think piece out just about Travis Hunter and why I think my boss Scott Barrett is being a total boomer about Travis Hunter. But yeah, I would click Hunter in managed leagues, kind of vaguely anywhere I would click Tet McMillan. I'm fine with clicking Travis Hunter as well. To me, he is nearly as good of a wide receiver prospect in like the purest sense as Tet McMillan is. He is in a nearly as good situation for fantasy production. I really think that the potential downside of him not playing anywhere near full-time wide receiver snaps is a bit overstated, just because if he's really good, he's going to be out there on the field a lot, right? I think really only in the scenarios where he's not actually special as an NFL wide receiver are the ones where he would be down at like the 40 to 50% route rate that is totally non-viable for a fantasy wide receiver. So kind of like, yeah, his downside outcome that everyone's so scared of is pretty much just correlated with the downside outcome that every rookie has, which is what if they're not as good in the NFL as we think they're going to be. And all of that is priced in very clearly, looking at history, especially by the ADP markets. So yeah, I'm just not at all worried about the Travis Hunter defense stuff. Will he play enough offense? Like I just think he's an amazing player and has a chance to be really special in this offense that we saw that ranked 4th best in fantasy points per route run last year among all teams. So yeah, Hunter is also a guy I'd give a shout here, kind of in the middle late rounds for wide receiver upside.
Love it. All right. So round 1 or 2, you need a receiver. You can either go wide receiver, or running back, wide receiver. Round 3, quarterback is a great pick. Round 4 and 5, you're loading up on running backs. Round 6, I think T-Mac, RJ Harvey, high upside rookies are great picks, depending on what you've done through the first 5 rounds. I think Colson Loveland enters the conversation around 6, 7, 8. And then it's just this kind of upside range where you want to take shots on rookies that maybe in the past they would have been going in this later range, round 10, and that's why they were round 11, round 12. That's why they're a league winner. You maybe have to draft them a little bit earlier, but I mean, looking at Ron's data and just what we've seen and just how excited we are about these rookies, I think it's totally viable to take them in this range and hope that they can win you leagues at the end of the year. And then as you get into the round 10, 11, 12 range, that's where you really want to be hitting the late round QBs. Are you fine drafting a QB in like round 11 and 12 or 12 and 13? I mean, you don't have to. In a lot of leagues, you can get JJ McCarthy at the very end of the draft. But if you're in a sharp draft, would you double dip on quarterback here?
Yeah, so to me, it depends a little bit just on how big your benches are and how big your league is. So if you have kind of larger benches and it makes sense to have a quarterback taking up one of those spots, I think that's totally viable. Yeah, going with like a Drake May plus JJ McCarthy or something like that, at really any of these riskier guys plus cheap JJ McCarthy, Justin Fields plus JJ McCarthy, I think makes a lot of sense this year. I think going with 2 quarterbacks kind of later is totally viable.
It's Drake May for me. He's easily my favorite out of this group. I'm totally fine taking him around 10. The other thing
I would draft just Drake May by himself and also be fine with that, though. I should say, like, if it's just May on my team, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, if you've got the space, I think another QB could be a good thing, because I do worry that May might get himself hurt the way that he runs. But man, I'm so excited to see what the running looks like this year if he gets more designed rushing under Josh McDaniel. I wanted to bring up running back. So we see more hits in this range, and I'm just curious. I don't think I've heard you talk about it much, how you are handling the round 10 through 14 range at running back. Are you somebody who is really latching onto the backup running backs with upside to step in and fill a bigger role? And if so, do they have to have a receiving profile, or is it more important that they're on a good team? What are some quick rules that you could throw out here, and who are your favorite targets in this range?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is I really like if there's some role ambiguity with these backfields. And that's just because if there's like multiple guys that we're not totally sure which one is going to get the receiving role or the goal line role or what have you, that just naturally suppresses both of their ADPs and gives you a lot more upside to hit kind of bigger. So all of the Jaguars running backs especially come to mind for me here. Tootin continues to be my favorite. I expect him to be the cheapest by the time everybody is actually drafting. Tank Bigsby also totally viable. I don't think they have to have this amazing receiving skill set if you're drafting them in this range, but it's definitely nice, and it definitely does increase their overall upside, just if it's a guy that can handle receiving work. But it's not like a total requirement. I guess I will say also, like, a lot of these kind of later hits have been like the contingent value guys. Let's see, like I think Elijah Mitchell might be in here his rookie season or something. Like Raheem Mostert in 2023 is here in the late area. So just it's obviously harder to predict those guys, but just taking shots on if everything role wise were to go correctly for this running back, meaning someone gets hurt or he like beats someone out in training camp, would he have like either a 3-down role or be on a very valuable offense? Just either of those things are what is going to point me toward guys.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. All right, what I've got pulled up now is first down per route run data, courtesy of the Fantasy Points data suite. Like I mentioned, this is really important. It's been a key signal for Ryan in finding these league winners, and we don't have time to get into all the discussion about it today, but I do want to just point out some guys who do clear, like they absolutely have the data that you're looking for. One who doesn't that we've talked about is like Jackson Smith and Jigba. Dan and I contextualized that on Tuesday's episode. Maybe things could look a lot better on a per route basis with Clint Kubiak, and maybe he gets into this range. But what Ryan found was that for these league winners, typically everything increases from the year prior to the league winning season, which makes sense. But first down per route run rate was pretty much steady, which suggests that it's a signal. Like if they're already producing this stat at a high rate, when everything catches up to it and some of the other efficiency like yardage and touchdowns and stuff like that starts to match this elite first down per route run production, that's when you get the league winning season. So I wanted to point out guys who already had really good first down per route run data last year. So you can see that on the screen, the leaderboard for last year. Of course, Puka Nacua just obviously jumps off the page. That's where we're at with Nacua. I did some historical digging, Ryan, on Nacua. I went back into like the PFF data, which isn't going to be a perfect 1-for-1, but I you know me, like I adjusted it to make sure I could get it as close to the fantasy points data as possible. And what I found was that Nacua, we really haven't seen anything like this. The only thing above it was Tyreek Hill's 2023 season, which was the most unprecedented per route thing we've ever seen. The other seasons are like in the 15 to 16% range are the best ones. Nakua's was 17% last year. And then if you look at like the ages of the receivers when they did this, it's all, it's that range that we talk about where like league winners can be in this upper 20s range because they're in their prime. Nakua's doing it at freaking 23 years old. Like I'm so bullish about Puka. Everybody is, and for good reason. The rest of the leaderboard you can see here, I'm going to highlight the guys who stood out to me. So Nico Collins, I've got past 2 seasons data combined. What we're looking at on the screen here is just the 2024 season. Nico Collins is wide receiver 3 in first downs per route run over the past 2 seasons. I think that's really important because he's wide receiver 1 in yards per route run, and he gets a lot of these massive chunk plays. First downs per route run is a way to kind of like equalize it. Like a 50-yard gain is just 1 first down, and still Nico's really, really high in this rate, higher than anybody else who has such a deep average depth of target. He's so good, and I think he absolutely belongs in round 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 4 over the past 2 seasons. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 5. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 6. Tied with Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 6 over the past 2 seasons. Hopefully he comes back healthy. Drake London, wide receiver 11 over the past 2 seasons combined, was wide receiver 5 in 2024. He has 11% is his career rate. This is per True Media, so that it's going to be a little bit different than what you're seeing on the screen here from Fantasy Points data. 11% is his career rate. Last year was at 12.3%. With Michael Penix, it was at 15%. And again, this is, I do think first down per route run, if you're going to pull any thread from the small sample size thing with Penix, it's that. I think that's your best bet in terms of what might be sustainable. 15%, which would have been higher than anybody not named Puka Nacua last year. And then if you look at London's numbers over the past, he's played 50 career games. And if you compare that to the initial career games, the initial 50 career games for some of the best receivers we've seen. This is dating back to 2013. His data really stands out. And what's so insane to me is he has this elite 11% first down per route run rate for his career through 50 games. That's right on par with Justin Jefferson's start. It's above CeeDee Lamb's start. It's right on par with Mike Evans and the, Jameis Winston fantasy wonderland. The offense has been broken. The offense has been horrible. You to produce first downs, you have to have a quarterback who can facilitate that. And until very recently, we've seen no semblance of even competent quarterback play for Drake London. And it's like he's not that far behind, prime Michael Thomas through 50 games and stuff like that. That blows my mind. So I know he's not as sexy as some of the year 2 guys, but I really think he fits everything in terms of what we're looking for a league winner, and the first down per route data just backs that up even further.
Yeah, 13 targets per game and 23 fantasy points per game in his 3 games with Michael Penix last year. The sample we got was insane. Darnell Mooney didn't play one of those games, but even in the 2 he did play, Mooney was a clear afterthought after London. Yeah, I'm extremely high on London for all those reasons. And a couple other kind of interesting things. If you were to personnel adjust his first downs per route run, which I have not done, but in 2024, the Falcons were running a ton of 11 personnel.
I did it. It's his numbers don't drop at all. I didn't want to cut you off, but I did it. We talked about in yesterday's show. The Falcons had more 3 receiver sets than anybody last year in terms of percentage, and that normally would cause a drop off in per route data. And it's nope, I'm still getting tons of targets, even with 2 other receivers to compete with targets for, and Bijan Robinson, who is a good targeter, and Kyle Pitts. He's only out there to catch passes. That's the only reason he's on the field. And still, I have almost a freaking 30% target per route run rate.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is insane, obviously. So you could argue for the numbers on the screen to be even higher than what they are if you were to personnel adjust for everybody else in the league relative to London. And also what's kind of interesting to me is one of the bigger cheat codes or connective tissue of all of these McShanahan offenses is that they run a lot of play action. And they like to do that, obviously, from under center, because you can just more effectively marry the run game and the pass game when you're dropping back from under center instead of from the shotgun. It makes the passes look a lot more like runs. It breeds all of this per route efficiency stuff. But the Falcons basically didn't do that last year. Kirk Cousins was very rarely under center. Penix in his couple of games was kind of the same. They had one of the lower play action rates across the league, at least from the data I have glanced at. I'm writing up kind of a full breakdown of this for my Play Callers article that'll be coming out on Fantasy Points soon. But in the world where Zach Robinson, as a McVay disciple, is okay, now this year is when we start putting in even more of the play action stuff, because we have Penix who it can actually physically run that and do a full drop back and get onto his back foot and throw after play action. Then the efficiency can go even more insane, right? It could be even crazier than these amazing per route statistics we're seeing. So yeah, that's just even more nerding out about how unbelievable Drake London could be this year.
I think it's a really good point. They had to change things and run a weird offense. I think they were at the very bottom of the league in play action, which is unusual for a McShanahan tree. The motion was there. A lot of the tendencies that we typically see were there, but play action wasn't. And I think Ryan hit on it. It was for a reason. Could change this year, which would only further boost things. On the screen, I highlighted 4 receivers who I think are a little bit overlooked in terms of per route data. First down per route run rate for Stephon Diggs was really good last year. Do you have any thoughts on any of these guys and how they fit into the league-winning archetype? It's Stephon Diggs, Juwan Jennings, Devontae Smith, and Josh Downs.
Yeah, so Diggs, just age-wise, is a bit above our cutoff of where we typically see league-winning seasons actually happen. I will say, though, just based on him being fairly efficient on a per route basis last year, in a year when ADP is telling us he's totally washed and the market thinks he's done, that makes him a pretty interesting kind of later pick to me in specifically managed leagues. In best ball, I haven't clicked Diggs a single time just because I think the risk of him being a near zero is a lot higher than other guys that go around his range. But yeah, for managed where a guy's floor doesn't matter, especially this late, then yeah, I think Diggs is a logical pick. Devontae Smith, I have warmed up to. Part of that is because, yeah, his per route data is amazing, the first downs per route run and everything. His average separation score data is incredible, like pretty much right up there with AJ Brown, just behind him. He's an amazing separator. All of like the inherent stats we have on Devontae Smith over his career show us that he is a top 12 talent wide receiver in the league. If you draft him where he currently goes and he kind of does his usual like 13 points per game thing, that's fine. But in games over his career without AJ Brown since 2022, he's over 17 fantasy points per game. Last year in games with AJ Brown, but without just Dallas Goedert, he was over 17 fantasy points per game. Smith is kind of the rare like contingent upside bet at wide receiver where if either of those two guys get hurt, a league-winning season is actually in the cards for Smith, and I wouldn't say that about really any other receiver going in his range. So that's something to think about. And then, yeah, Juwan Jennings and Josh Downs are like the easiest kind of later round clicks to me at receiver. Yeah, the first downs per out run data you have up there is insane. Downs has been a lot better without Anthony Richardson over his career. Daniel Jones a lot better at kind of throwing these horizontally breaking routes that I've been talking about all summer. We don't know who's starting week one, but I would expect both A-Rich and Daniel Jones to play significant games this year. And then Jennings is just nuts to me. Like the only reason that Jennings is not like a round 4 or a round 5 pick right now is because people are kind of weirded out by the late year 5 breakout. And while I would normally be sympathetic to that of like, yeah, you don't want to bet on a year 5 breakout, the breakout has already happened. Like the rare thing we don't normally see has already happened. I don't want to then penalize Jennings in the following season after we've seen him do what he did for basically an entire year in a very similar target competition wise situation to what he was in for most of last year, and just say, well, that didn't count because guys got hurt or whatever. So yeah, all these names you've highlighted, I think are really strong kind of later receiver picks.
The Jennings breakout has already happened point is a really important one to bring up because it's not, in the past we've had receivers where it's like they could step into this role that there's target ambiguity, people have left, but it's like, we never get that from year 5 guys. He already did it. I mean, look at the freaking first down per out run right here. It's above Ladd McConkey. Like it was really, really impressive stuff from him. It was above Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb, like Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jackson Smith and Jigba. A lot of these guys that fit archetypically what you'd expect for a league-winning receiver don't quite hit the threshold or barely hit the threshold that we need in terms of first downs per out run. Juwan Jennings clears easily. I, on that note, want to quickly transition to tight ends and target ambiguity and George Kittle. I think George Kittle might be the season. Like people have been George Kittle sympathists for so long. He's obviously so good. And when you look at the per route data, it supports that, but it hasn't all come together for Kittle yet. I mean, he's had some really good fantasy seasons, of course, but I'm like looking at this and it's like if Deebo Samuel's not there, we could see Kittle ascend to something we've never really seen from him before. And so I want to quickly run through your tight end, what you found to be the most important at tight end. Usually league-winning tight ends have previously been heavily targeted. That's Kittle if you look at the per route data for sure. Usually they were entering year 1 or 2. What do you think on Kittle fitting this? Because it doesn't, like, is he just an outlier? Is that where you're at with his age?
So it's not so much that they have to be entering year 1 or 2. It's if we haven't seen them previously be heavily targeted, it's okay to make excuses on that point for obviously the year 1 guys and the year 2 guys. Because that's when we see the biggest jumps. That's when we see the ADP market not priced in the upside of those players. So that's like how we can make excuses for the younger guys, but that it doesn't like drive me away from a George Kittle whatsoever. Because yeah, we do have plenty of older league winning tight ends.
And then the last one is league winning tight ends usually aren't on crowded offenses. 12 out of 13 league winners at the tight end position came from offenses where there were not multiple other pass catchers being drafted inside of the top 60. And so with, Ayuk and Debo not around anymore, and Ayuk pushed down the board, Kittle definitely fits this description this year. You had a few other guys that I wanted you to highlight, and then I actually have a few guys that I think are sneaky candidates to throw into the league-winning tight end discussion. Talk me through your guys, and then I'll bring up mine, and then we are going to have to skip. We're going to postpone the Brock Bowers debate, just build the suspense up even further. Next week, Ryan is coming on. Next week is our sleepers week. And so we're having just awesome guests come around and give us their favorite sleepers. And we're going to have the listeners, the crowd, the audience debate and decide who has the best sleepers. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I think on next week's episode, you and Graham Barton are coming on. It's going to be with Dwayne McFarland and Ian Harditz. And you're going to compete against me and Dan. So it's going to be like a tag team match here.
Okay.
That'll be really cool and really fun. And to start that off, I think you and I will just debate Brock Bowers, and we'll have the analysts and the crowd decide who's right, what we need to do with this guy. Because it's a conundrum for real. Like, he is such a talented player, and it's really tough to decide what to do when you look at this data, what to do with him in that round 1-2 range. But Ryan, give me your league-winning tight ends who you're looking at based off the data that you found.
Yeah, so I mean, you've already talked about Colson Loveland, so I'll gloss over him, but he's kind of like my number one guy that I want to click the most in that kind of later range. Other guys to highlight, Evan Engram is really interesting to me. 7.8 targets per game, 25% targets per route run over his last 2 seasons, top 4 among tight ends in both categories. There's nobody else on the Broncos among pass catchers being drafted highly aside from Cortland Sutton. Nobody got over a 75% route share in any single game other than Cortland Sutton last year. There's a clear just like route vacuum here. You can get into the particulars on whether Engram actually fits the Joker role and whether he can be on the field in run plays to marry the run with the pass and all of that stuff. But he's cheap enough and managed that I'm interested. And kind of the other big one is Hunter Henry to me. So in his games with Drake May last year, Henry was top 6 across most receiving categories among tight ends, tight end 8 by fantasy points per game in that sample. The last time Josh McDaniels was his OC, he tied for the 6th most end zone targets among all players, 12 end zone targets. So I think there's upside here for there. It's a very ambiguous and not deep at all receiving core here. If Hunter Henry kind of emerges as the beneficiary of Drake May being really good in the offense, being functional, and he's completely free, like, that's pretty attractive to me. And I guess like the closest honorable mention is going to be David Njoku. He's very expensive on ESPN, very not expensive on Yahoo and some other sites. But yeah, his target volume's just been insane. You obviously are worried about the offense and the Browns being implied for the fewest points, but that's pretty much the only knock you can make against him. And he has been incredible over these stretches with Joe Flacco and with Jameis Winston, kind of despite that in the past. So yeah, Njoku is like the next name off my mouth here.
I love the Hunter Henry note. I've got a stat to support one of my guys that you didn't mention, and I'm not surprised you didn't mention him because no one wants to. He's killed us in fantasy. But first, it's really a Hunter Henry stat. So this is the percentage of first downs accounted for while on the field. Look who's here at tight end 4, Hunter Henry, above Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith, Kelce, Kittle. Kind of an obscure stat, but if this offense scales up and is better under Drake May in year 2, I really think Henry could be the best late round source of value at the tight end position. Okay, so the guy who I alluded to that I do think fits all the parameters here, we just don't feel good about the bet because he hasn't looked good, and the role isn't where we want it to be. We don't know if he can stay on the field all the time or where he fits into the offense. It's Dalton Kincaid, right? The top scoring offense in terms of projected betting markets entering year 3 in an offense that doesn't have any teammates drafted in the top 100. It's clearly Dalton Kincaid. He's tied in 14, and that's that I just gave right behind David Njoku and ahead of Sam Laporta. So it's the percentage of first downs accounted for when on the field. I don't think he's been good. but he has shown flashes, and they've shown flashes of really wanting to get him the ball. And I think if ever there's a time that he's going to become a focal point for this offense, it would be this year going into year 3, before they have to make a decision on 4th-year option and stuff, or 5th-year option and stuff like that. It's definitely like an important moment in Kincaid's career. Can he rise to the occasion? I don't know, but I do think he fits the archetype. What do you think on Kincaid as a league winner?
On paper, you're right that he pretty much does. To me, I am way too Max Tashano pilled to even really consider Kincaid. Max Tashano, by the way, for those who don't know, you should go check out his content. Remember the tight ends over on Substack. Just incredibly knowledgeable guy about all things tight ends and NFL schemes. So highly recommend his work. But the gist of it basically is that Dalton Kincaid probably doesn't have that much upside in fantasy football just because he can't get on the field enough, especially in the Bills offense, where it's kind of predicated around Josh Allen and like the efficiencies that you're getting there off of play action and heavy personnel. Kincaid can't ever just be the main and only blocking tight end on the field because he can't really block that well. He can't play in 11 and be the primary blocker there from in line. So that's why you've seen his route share be really low, and why you've seen Dawson Knox play so much over the last 2 seasons. To me, Kincaid like doesn't quite fit. I think he's fine in best ball because he's extremely cheap. But I just feel better about all those other names that I gave.
Totally fair. Yeah, no, it doesn't feel good to have Dalton Kincaid on your team. I do think he fits, though. I wanted to point him out because I think we all have this bias, including Ryan. Didn't even include him, but like he does fit. Maybe just close your eyes and click the name. The other 2 guys I would bring up, young in good offenses, and there is target ambiguity. I think that both Ben Sinnott and Orlando Gadsden make sense here as super late round dart throws. So I just wanted to bring their names up because I think they do sort of fit into the archetype. Do you have any thoughts on those 2? They fit?
I mean, Gadsden especially is really interesting to me. Just an amazing receiving profile coming out of college. We have seen the Greg Roman tight ends be amazing, especially off of play action. And we saw after Roman left Baltimore, Mark Andrews' usage and production on play action just went down so much. It is kind of the Greg Roman big slot tight end role that I think is real and that could be very productive for any player that gets all of it and keeps it to himself. This is why we saw kind of those like really crazy like few week stretches out of Will Dissly or even like Stone Smart after Will Dissly got hurt last year. So just a +1 on Gadsden there.
Love it. Yeah, we've been highlighting for Dynasty, but I think he is somebody who at the end of the draft, he could be relevant this year. That wouldn't shock me. I've been getting a steady drum beat out of camp that he's really impressed there. And yeah, Greg Roman offense. I went back and watched all Justin Herbert's targets last year, his dropbacks, and like it's so clear how important that role is. And they were letting him down a lot. Like Will Dissly had an okay season, but there were a lot of plays where a lot of meat was left on the bone. And I think it's possible that he plays his way into a role. Ryan, thank you so much. This was phenomenal. We could have gone for 2 or 3 hours easily, but you got to get out of here. What can you point people to other than, the age curves, all the stuff we put on the screen today? What are you working on over at Fantasy Points Data? What do you want to leave the people with here?
Yeah, so obviously all my writing over at fantasypoints.com, you can check it out. The statistically significant series going through lots of different stats in the Fantasy Points data suite and how to use them and get an edge in fantasy football with those. If you are thinking about subscribing to either the data suite or to Fantasy Points, you should go over and use the code GIBS2025, all caps, GIBS2025. Get yourself a discount on any Fantasy Points subscription there. Also, we have a Fantasy Points data subscription giveaway happening over on Twitter right now. Go check it out on the Fantasy Points Twitter page. You got to go wish Jacob a happy birthday here and retweet it and get yourself in the running for that giveaway right now. So thanks so much for having me, Jacob. It was a ton of fun. Could talk with you another 2 hours about all of this stuff. And I suspect we will at some point. So yeah, thanks again so much.
Birthday treat for me. Get to chop it up with Ryan Heath. And then, yeah, be sure to tune in next week for those sleeper episodes. I think those are going to be really fun. And I'm just like some of the some of the absolute best workers that are putting in this work consistently and helping you win, helping you get sharper, and finding the league winners you need in the late rounds. And yeah, that's all. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. I'm not the plug god. I'm sorry. I'll do my best, but that's it for me. For Ryan, Beyond the Box Score. Thanks, everybody.